Hello everyone, welcome along. I'm just trying out a new setup, so I'm literally just going to test that you guys can hear me. This is the F1 catch-up show. I'm literally just checking it now. Let's just check you can hear me. Yep, you can. That's great. So you can hear me. Hello, welcome along to the F1 catch-up show. Then, as I said, I'm trying this new setup, a bit more like a podcast style setup. So yeah, I'm sorry if it goes a bit wrong, but I'm hoping it doesn't. I've got my microphone in front of me. I've got my camera right there. So yes, let's get right into this then. Very soon I will be joined by Charlie Tolhurst. Sorry if I'm not looking directly to the camera. That's because I'm talking into the microphone. So very soon I will be joined by Charlie Tolhurst, and we will be chatting all things F1 for this week. As you know, the Monaco practice was indeed today instead of Friday like it normally is. But first, we're going to start off with 20th of May. It rings a bell in the F1 community because it was in fact on this day that we lost the late great Niki Lauda. Niki will forever be in our hearts, who came back just 4 races later, 40 days later, after having that horrific accident at the Nürburgring. It was one of the most horrifying crashes that any of us have ever seen in the history of F1. But nothing to lose. Charlie is just coming. I'm just going to add him to the stream. Hello, Charlie. We were just talking, Charlie, that today, the 20th of May, rings a bell for the wrong reasons, unfortunately, because it was, in fact, on this day in 2019 that we lost the late, great Niki Lauda. Charlie, Niki was one of the greats of Formula One, wasn't he?
It was, Jack, incredible. 3-time world champion. Of course, Niki Lauda survived a horrendous accident in 1976 at the German Grand Prix. 3 drivers, including Guy Edwards, Brett Lunger and Hal Ertl, all saved his life. And he came back racing just 6 weeks later in Monza and finished 4th. And he's an incredible gentleman. And I'm sure Niki Lauda was the pinnacle for motor racing in the world. And I'm sure he'll be sorely missed by many. Tribute
the green helmet was described as by Jackie Stewart, Charlie.
Yeah.
But on a more positive note, let's turn to today's action, Charlie. Unusually, we have practice on a Thursday at Monaco.
Yes, we do, and it's because I think the drivers usually meet Prince Albert, I think, on the Fridays. They've moved the practice to today. We've got a couple of sessions we're running. Sergio Perez top in FP1. And in FP2, Ferrari actually showing some very strong pace, especially on the soft tyres today.
They did, Charlie. And the Monaco barriers claimed their first victim of the weekend in Mick Schumacher. He got a bit of oversteer going into Massenet and unfortunately lost it and damaged the rear suspension of that Haas car. Fortunately, Charlie, they've got all day tomorrow to fix that.
Yeah, Mick Schumacher will be, unfortunately... well, let's hope he can get out for the weekend. At least they've got a day to fix the car. I believe it did have a bit of suspension damage, so it might be having to be repaired, but he should be back out for the weekend, especially for Saturday's running.
It should be back out for FP3 on Saturday, Charlie. That Monaco, Charlie, it is more about the qualifying, isn't it? You know, it is virtually impossible to overtake on this track, let's face it. So if you get pole, unless you break down, you do stand a pretty good chance of coming over the line first at the end of it, don't you?
Well, at least Formula E provided us with an scintillating race at Monaco. But the thing is, though, Formula E are street racers. Formula One mainly race on permanent racetracks. It's going to be very difficult. This is by far, Jack, the most important qualifying of the season, because I think really grid position is key. If you start low down, you could be in lots of trouble getting through traffic. If you start at the front, you have a massive chance of potentially scoring.
The key thing is to qualifying, Charlie, is keep your car out the barriers. Because if you can do that, then, you know, unless you're finishing last, then you're not last, are you? So keeping your car out the barriers is the most important thing, and getting that cleaned up, because we are going to get yellow flags. We're probably going to get red flags as well in qualifying. Certainly in the race, we're going to get safety cars, that's for sure. We've had plenty already this season. Monaco's going to be no different. With the strategy, Charlie, you really got to take into account is if there's a safety car period early on, like we saw in 2019, on another racetrack, Charlie, Verstappen would have won that race. But it's Monaco. Hamilton could drive in the middle of the track. Verstappen may have been 3 seconds a lap quicker, but it didn't really matter, did it?
No, Jack, as well as that. And this is a big weekend for strategy because it's going to be difficult to predict how long the tyres are going to last. It's 78 laps long, I believe, by what I'm hearing. It's a 78 lap race.
It's quite a long race.
Yes, longest, in terms of laps, it's the longest of the season, I think. So,
in terms of overall distance, it is the shortest lap of the season as well.
Yes, overall distance, the shortest lap, but in terms of race laps, this is the longest at 78, I believe. So, a big race for many drivers. Strategy's key. Will it be a one-stop? Will it be a two-stop? We just don't know. It's really important that the teams and drivers get out. And I would say if you get caught in traffic here, you could be in trouble, especially through the final sector. And
will the weather play a part in this weekend? It could be quite windy this weekend on the coast. The Côte d'Azur, as they called it in Monaco, Charlie. Going into that swimming pool section, it's right on the coast, Charlie. That could be a bit of a problem if we have a potential crosswind.
Could be. I expect it to be fairly. I'm fairly optimistic. It might be a bit breezy for the race, but I think the thing is, though, at least what the drivers want is to go racing, and I don't know who it's going to play into the hands of with these temperatures. I expect, hopefully, Mercedes could do better with the temperatures, but Red Bull, they look really strong. Ferrari, don't rule them out as well. I really think Ferrari could surprise us this weekend. Lewis Hamilton said that today during the post-practice interviews. He
did, Charlie. He did indeed. What did you make of the practices? For a Monaco practice session, it was very tight, wasn't it? 7 milliseconds just separating Hamilton and Verstappen today.
Yeah, it's going to be a big weekend for both of them. They've got to perform. If they can't, the Hamilton and Verstappen are so close. Like, they've been close in qualifying, they've been close in the races, especially in Bahrain. It was 0.7 of a second covering them at the flag. I really think that this weekend is going to be proper rivalry between the two drivers in Lewis Hamilton and Red Bull's Max Verstappen.
Yeah, could it be the weekend where we see Hamilton, Charlie, or Verstappen have the breakthrough moment in the championship?
It could be interesting. I think Bottas cannot close onto Verstappen this race because he's more than 25 points behind. So even if Verstappen, say, retired, Bottas cannot catch him in the championship. But I think it's going to be a big race for both of them too, for Hamilton and Verstappen.
The thing is, Charlie, with Monaco, like we saw with Senna, absolutely everything is possible.
Yes, 1988, Senna crashing out at Portier despite dominating qualifying over 1.3 seconds quicker than Prost. So, yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think looking at 88 with Senna going off, that would have been whether he would have won 7 Monaco Grand Prix instead of 6. I think it's going to be really interesting. And Portier is a corner that you can easily get wrong. If you carry too much speed, if you understeer off that corner, you're straight in the barrier. And it's the same for every other corner. It really matters.
It is, Charlie, isn't it? Every corner, one mistake, bang, you're out.
You are, especially those barriers. Some drivers today, I think Leclerc made a great save at the Rascasse. I think
he did indeed, Charlie. Fernando Alonso, Charlie, didn't quite manage to save. He went straight on and into the barriers. Anthony Noakes.
He did, and then I heard he had a moment down at San Divot. Luckily, kept the car running. But yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it's going to be big. Anthony knows that final corner. Drivers use the curb and get very close to the wall. And Alonso just, I think, went a bit too much, used too much curb, and of course his front wing eventually fell off.
And as much as it's and in terms of average speed, Charlie, this is the lowest average speed that we have all year. in terms of circuits, but it doesn't need to be high speed, does it, to just show how difficult this track is?
It doesn't have to be about average speed. This circuit, Jack, is full of corners, full of short straights, and it's extremely narrow. We're talking, I don't know the exact measurement of the track, but it's really narrow. It's on closed public roads. It's very, very tough to overtake here. You'll be lucky to get a move down into Saint
Let's put it this way. If you imagine, Charlie, your A127, 2 lanes, that is the size of the racetrack effectively all the way round.
Yeah, I think as well, like, you've got a good passing opportunity at the tunnel because it does widen slightly, but
it does.
The rest of the circuit is very, very narrow, especially when you cross over.
They have slightly changed the Nouvelle chicane for this year, Charlie. Trying to make more of overtaking possible, so it's slightly faster than it used to be, and a bit wider than it used to be as well. So slight changes to the Nouvelle chicane, but other than that, the whole Monaco circuit has had a new service, so it's completely fresh, it's completely relayed, and it's only had the Monaco Historic and the Monaco E-Prix run on it. Yeah. So it's a pretty fresh service. But it's been nicely rubbed in, Charlie, by the residents of Monaco as well and their cars.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as well, like, going on back to Formula E and that, I mean, and obviously the historic race, they've had some racing on it. It is going to be rubbed in. Formula One will have to be very careful, especially with the tyres, because we know that some tyres take a little while getting up to temperature, others don't. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the new surface affects the tyres this weekend.
And the thing, one of the challenges of Monaco, Charlie, is we mentioned that the track will be rubbed in, but the thing is, they actually reopened the roads overnight, and the roads are open a lot of the day tomorrow. So all that rubbering in, Charlie, that they've done is all going to be wiped out by the motor cars or the public cars of Monaco tomorrow. Because after every session, after every day, they reopen the roads and Monaco goes back to normal. It's the magic of Monaco, Charlie. I believe after half an hour, Charlie, after 30 minutes after the race is finished, they begin to reopen the roads again. 30 minutes after the race has finished, They reopen Monaco roads.
It's crazy, but I think as well, like, they've obviously got the grandstands probably permanent. I don't know whether they are, but they've obviously got, like, grandstands up where they can still watch, the fans can still watch the action. So it's a very unique facility. It's for a street circuit.
And also, Charlie, we've got back to front pit lane as well, haven't we? Because most of the time, the pit lane faces the racetrack, but it doesn't at Monaco. It faces the track going into the Rascasse and out the swimming pool, doesn't it? It's a weird pit lane, but
I think it faces, I'd say, eastwards rather than like northwards. I'd say that. Actually, not northwards, westwards. So it faces in a completely opposite direction on a compass.
But it is magic, isn't it? It is magic. It's every motor racing driver's dream to win at Monaco in any championship. But we're going to move on to Formula E in a minute, Charlie. But before we do, can we just say Théo Pourchaire became the youngest Formula 2 driver to secure a pole position this afternoon at just 17 years of age, Charlie.
I've been hearing a lot of great things about this guy, Jack, because he is a great... Is this Formula 2 or Formula 3, out of interest?
This is Formula 2.
Formula 2?
He's already won the Formula 3 World Championship, Charlie.
Wow. I tell you what, this boy, I don't know where he's from, but he is amazing.
I believe he
so much speed.
I mean, to get pole position at 17 years of age in a Formula 2 championship that has the likes of Jack Aitken, loads of great drivers in that championship, Charlie. Théo Pourchaire, 17, has done it in Monaco. And he will start, Charlie, that feature race on Saturday afternoon from that top spot. We do actually have an F2 race tomorrow. Sprint race 1. F2 don't have the day off like Formula 1 do. But they don't race on Sunday, Charlie, when Formula 1 do. So it's a strange weekend, isn't it?
Now, haven't they, with the practices and that.
It is a strange weekend, but again, it's the thrills of Monaco, isn't it? Thursday practice, which meant we had the media day yesterday. Some of the drivers, Charlie, Lando Norris, he's signed a new deal to stay in Formula One until
McLaren have a new livery, Jack, as well for this weekend, and they've gone back to the Gulf colours.
Do you know what, Charlie? I think that livery should actually stay.
Really?
Yeah, I really like it.
I think the livery literally was really good. I wish they kept the livery on the car, to be honest. But I think by what I'm hearing, it is only a one-off.
From what I'm hearing,
they're going to revert back to the papaya orange for the next race, which I believe is in Baku. I'm not entirely sure.
Yes, I think we go to Azerbaijan after this. The 2 back-to-back street races for our drivers. But let's go on to FE, Charlie, now, Formula E. We're trying round through as many motorsports as we possibly can within the time slot. As you mentioned earlier, Charlie, an absolute cracker on the streets of the Principality.
I watched the race, Jack. I watched the highlights, and I thought this was the best Formula E race I've ever seen. What a race. And I tell you what, Mitch Evans produces one of the greatest Formula E moves, ran the outside at Beau Rivage on Antonio Felix da Costa.
Have you ever seen that before, Charlie?
Best FE move ever.
In any championship, have you ever seen cars go wheel to wheel up Beau Rivage like that? I was watching it. I was watching it, Charlie, on the iPlayer. I actually had my heart in my mouth when they went up there because I was 90% sure that was going to end up in the barriers.
Probably, but Evans just got it through. He didn't know in the race it was da Costa because da Costa got him back down into the Nouvelle chicane. And Robin Freins actually picked Evans off, who was running out of energy and finished in second.
Sorry, Charlie, I just forgot to mention something about Formula 2. It's on a bit of a sadder note, unfortunately, because if you remember, Charlie, Antoine Hubert did actually take his first win in Formula 2 around the streets of Monaco. We very sadly lost Antoine Hubert just a few months later at Spa-Francorchamps, Charlie, in what was one of the worst accidents that Formula 2 has seen in a very long time. But obviously, we'll be racing with Nicky and Antoine in our hearts this weekend, and all of the cars running across this weekend will be carrying the red star and the AH19 symbol.
Yeah, I think Nicky. I just want to say, Jack, on Nicky as well. I mean, I a couple of years ago when we heard the news, I thought that the death just overshadowed. It was an overshadowment to motorsport, and even Lewis Hamilton missed a press conference to go and pay his tributes to this incredible gentleman from Austria.
And it actually happened, Charlie, just a few days before Monaco Grand Prix weekend, didn't it?
Yes, it did. I think it was on the Tuesday, I'm not entirely sure what day, but it was on, the Tuesday before the race. And the news broke that we lost Niki Lauda. And I was literally having to report this on a radio show. Absolutely horrendous news.
Yeah, do you know what, Charlie? I just woken up and it came up breaking on my phone. I was like, what's happened now? What's happened now? And I saw it, Niki Lauda had died. And your heart just sinks when you hear that. And I straight away I went onto Instagram and Twitter because I wanted to pay tribute to him, like many of us did. We all paid tribute, like we did today. And just reading, Charlie, the messages today that some people have wrote about Niki Lauda, it's heartwarming, really. It really is heartwarming because what they wrote, Charlie, they wrote with such dignity and they got it spot on. What they wrote about Niki, they got it absolutely spot on. What Mercedes said, I don't know who the admin is at Mercedes. Again, they hit the nail on the head with Niki today.
They did, and I think as well. Niki was an incredible gentleman. He's so iconic to F1, and people should really take into consideration that he's a 3-time world champion. He's one of the greatest drivers that graced the sport. Niki Lauda will be a driver that I'm sure will be forever remembered by many, many people in the Formula One community.
Gone but never forgotten.
Don K. Niki. That's exactly what we want.
Thank you, Niki. Yeah, thank you, Niki, Charlie. Anyway, let's go back to the FE action now. I just thought I'd mention that now. It was a great race. As you said, Charlie, Beau Rivage side by side up Beau Rivage, ran the outside of Massenet. It doesn't get much more dangerous or the bravery standards, Charlie. Mitch Evans must break the bravery bar for Mitch Evans must have been going through and out of the halo. For Mitch Evans, he was in attack mode. But nevertheless, Charlie, one of the greatest overtaking manoeuvres we've seen around Monaco in all series.
I'd argue it. I'd argue it as well. The move was so incredible. Like, I watched it and I was like, how on earth has he managed to make this stick? I was just literally speechless. I could not believe that was one of the best overtakes I've ever seen in my life.
It was brave, Charlie. It was brave. Anyway, let's get to Charlie. Another great motor racing spectacle. It is Indy 500 practice and qualifying week at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But we will go back to the GMR Grand Prix of Indianapolis first, which took place on Saturday night, Charlie. But first, on Friday night, Romain Grosjean. What a story, Charlie. What a story.
I watched it.
Yeah, I did too, Charlie, actually. From having that horrendous accident at Bahrain. An accident that really no one's ever seen before, Charlie. Horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. Yet, 6 months later, Charlie, he's defied the odds. And he's gone and taken pole at the GMR Indianapolis Grand Prix.
Can I say, Jack, incredible. Grosjean literally last year in November or December time was fighting for his life in a near fatal crash. Basically on the brink of death, comes back at Indianapolis at the road course when he's only doing road and street this year, not the ovals. But to take pole position by a couple of tenths per second from, I think, Scott Dixon, who's the reigning champ. What a drive from him. He deserves it. He deserves that position. He deserves pole. I'll tell you what, it wasn't just Formula One, Zach Brown, so many team leaders commented on Grosjean's achievements in IndyCar.
Unfortunately, Charlie, we've had another calendar reshuffle, which means the private test that would have been taking place for Grosjean at France. The private test is still taking place, but that demo run that was supposed to take place, I believe it would have been the 22nd of June, has now been officially cancelled because with the calendar reshuffle, Charlie, it's no longer possible to go racing in Turkey this year, unfortunately, and we've had to add a second Austrian Grand Prix to the calendar. The Styrian Grand Prix, but there's been question marks about this, Charlie. That could we have had another race at Paul Ricard and tried one of the different layouts? Personally, I don't like Paul Ricard.
Same, I don't really like it either, to be honest.
I would much rather have two races at Spielberg, if I'm honest.
Yeah, agree, 100%. I think Paul Ricard, again, it's got potential, but it's just not. I don't think the circuit's provided that great racing. I just think as well, it's very difficult to follow another car. The DRS passes there are very easy, like as well. The effect of the DRS has been just like
it's a GT circuit, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's what it is. It's a GT circuit. It's not an F1 circuit.
I think the chicane spoils it for Formula One.
Would you take away the chicane, Charlie, and have some racing side by side through scene?
I think definitely that it's never had a chicane. I mean, it had a chicane put in there to slow the cars down, but I think Formula One, the Mistral Straight's so iconic in motorsports, one of the longest straights I've ever seen. Without that chicane, I think Formula One should be fine racing there.
And also the reason why they added the chicane, Charlie, was at the Scene Curb, there never used to be that much runoff. There never used to be it. They've added that much runoff now. I'm pretty sure the cars could slow down if they went off, or it would be a light touch with the barrier. Nothing really serious. I don't think we need to have the chicane there anymore.
I don't think we do as well. I think the chicane just slurs the fun a little bit.
Sorry, I'm just plugging it in. Yeah, it does, Charlie. It really does. Yeah, the only good thing, like track limits is just so much of a problem, isn't it? Track limits is so much of a problem. And that's what we've seen, Charlie, with the grass and the gravel circuits. We don't get any issues with track limits, do we?
No, I think as well when you look at a circuit like I mean, you just got like Abu Dhabi. I'll give an example. There is loads of concrete runoff. Like, it's not concrete, but like there's just lots of runoff, no gravel, hardly any of the corners have got gravel, asphalt runoffs. When you go to an old school track, and I'll probably say there's one old school track that I think Formula One go to. I can't think of that many. Bahrain has got some gravel traps. I think you just see the difference in racing. Gravel traps slow you down much quicker, and in my opinion, I think are safer than the concrete or asphalt.
Yeah, I have to agree, Charlie. I think the gravel traps are much safer. Problem with gravel traps is it is easy for cars to get beached, isn't it? But then, at the end of the day, Charlie, the driver makes a mistake. They should be punished for their mistake, shouldn't they? They shouldn't be able to make a mistake and come back on like nothing's happened. At the end of the day, they're professionals. They should be punished for it, shouldn't they? If they make a mistake, it's like Monaco, isn't it? Monaco, make a mistake, you're in the barriers. You're punished for it.
Monaco's not really got any of the gravel traps because of how narrow it is. It's really a barrier.
I don't think Monaco needs gravel traps, Charlie. If Monaco had gravel traps, the trap would be about 1 meter wide.
There's just no room at Monaco, and I think the barriers do punish the drivers if you get it wrong. They do really, really punish them, and it can lead to inevitable safety cars potentially.
And also, Charlie, we see these metal barriers at many other tracks, but the thing is, these metal barriers, they're not actually the same because, like we saw in Bahrain, Grosjean hit one of those metal barriers. It bent. It looked a mess. It done what it's supposed to do. Those barriers at Monaco, they don't move. They are static. They are static. They do not move.
They don't. And I think as well is that it's clear that Formula One have ensured that these barriers are being checked to the highest safety standards. They're very safe. I think as well, it's just any motor racing series other than Formula One go to Monaco. Those are very safe barriers, and they can take the force of an impact, whether it's, 3 or 4G or even up to 20G. They're really safe. And that's why the barriers are really, they've got reinforced concrete in there, which makes them very strong when the drivers have massive crashes.
And all of these, Charlie, have to pass the FIA checks. Every track has to pass the FIA high-speed check, apart from Monaco, Charlie. Then it still has to pass the safety car check, but you know what? The safety car has to blend in with the public traffic. And the Aston Martin, Charlie, I saw a picture of it, Charlie, having to let someone cross the zebra crossing. Indeed, down the main straight, the Aston Martin safety car. Bert Mylander, Charlie, looked like he had a real handful because there was a big traffic jam going down the straight yesterday, and Bert Mylander was sitting there thinking, I want to drive some high-speed cars, not be sitting in a traffic jam going at 1 mile an hour.
I think because Monaco is such a built on public roads, I think it's difficult for them to sort of do practice laps around it because it's a circuit that's literally it's a temporary track. It's converted back into a street, back into a racing circuit. It's just difficult for them to get.
Charlie, they do complete the high speed track test on Thursday morning before FP1, so they do it definitely. Yeah. But also, can we just say a massive thank you and to everyone who's got the Monaco Grand Prix on this year, because at the start of the year, Charlie, it was looking like it's going to be off again, and we might be going in 2022. But the brilliant work of the race organisers, Formula One, the FIA, we've managed to get this incredible event on.
They have, and I think as well, this race is so iconic to F1. I really think Formula One. Will the Monaco Grand Prix ever go away? It's been on the calendar since 1950 on the World.
I don't think it can, Charlie. Formula One would get so much stick, and they'd lose so much following if they took the Monaco Grand Prix away, because it's historic, isn't it? It's like
Yeah,
if they took the British Grand Prix away, if they took the Belgian Grand Prix away,
yeah.
if they took the Italian Grand Prix away, all of these races have so much history.
They would. I mean, some of these circuits you could hold them on different venues, but I think the original circuits are the best places to keep them on, especially Monaco.
Yeah, that definitely. Anyway, let's get on to Charlie. Contract negotiations. Lewis Hamilton. Lewis has recently announced that he wants to get his Mercedes contract for next year done by the summer. He doesn't want to hang around like he did last year. He wants this done, doesn't he, Charlie? He wants to stay in Formula One.
We're going to touch on Valtteri Bottas in a minute because there's been some talk about his contract negotiations as well. But Lewis Hamilton, I think, looks like he will be staying at Mercedes next year. He sounds like he really wants to sign a new contract to stay with the team for longer.
And Lewis Hamilton, Charlie, said potentially he's got another 5 more years left of him in Formula One. Then, Charlie, you're looking at, in terms of titles, 9, 10, maybe even 11 if he stays on for 5 more years. Where is Lewis Hamilton's success going to end? Because he just gets, Charlie, I thought Turkey was one of his great drives. It was unbelievable. How you can do that, I have no idea on this earth. But you know what, Charlie? He's got better. And
I think he has, yeah.
He continues to impress, Charlie. He gets better every single race. Yes, he has the odd dip, Imola. All right, he comes back. Portimao storms it. Spain makes a strategy that seemed virtually impossible. 20 seconds behind, Charlie, with 20 laps to go. Won the race comfortably.
He did. I think Hamilton's got lots of years left in him. I mean, in terms of contracts this week that have been signed, Lando Norris has signed a multi-year deal to stay at McLaren as well. So I really could see Lewis Hamilton potentially having more success. Does he stay at Mercedes in them 5 years? We just don't know.
Who knows, Charlie? If he gets the 8th, he might well hang his suit up and say, "That's me done. I'm not risking it anymore," because Formula One is dangerous. We've seen it.
Now, Jack, there was some talk about Valtteri Bottas the other day. He announced in a press conference that he was going to consider this summer about his potential contract negotiation with Mercedes. And apparently there've been some crazy reports out over the last few weeks that he could be potentially dropped by Mercedes mid-season. I mean, that sounds pathetic, I think.
I mean, Valtteri has closed down these reports, Charlie. But I've heard them from numerous different sources: BBC Sports, Sky Sports, Fox Sports, CNN, NBC, Formula One. More importantly, wherever these rumours, Charlie, are coming from, they're quite strong. And for me, it concerns me for Valtteri because he hasn't had a great start to the year, and in fact, I hate to say it, I think Valtteri's got worse. I really do. That crash at Imola, that big crash at Imola, that scary crash at Imola, would have dented his confidence. Massively would have dented his confidence. But then that crash at Bahrain would have thrown all of Grosjean's confidence that he's built over the past 8 years in F1 out of the window. Yeah, he goes and gets a pole at the GMR Grand Prix of Indianapolis. So it does baffle my mind as to what Valtteri is doing. Whether it's his training program, whether it's his personal trainer, whether it's his driving style, he's changed. He does spend a lot of time in the simulator, Charlie, and doing the track walks. When I was listening to Lewis Hamilton talking to Martin Brundle just a few weeks ago, he was telling me, Charlie, that he does not do any track walks and he only does about 20 laps in the simulator each year. But then Lewis being Lewis, he's a great driver. He can just drive out onto a track, never seen it before, and now the lap, can't he? That's Lewis.
Yes, I think Valtteri Oh, I mean, the problem is, Jack, he's been performances have not been as good. He's not been matching Hamilton as much as Nico Rosberg has, and he's got to get consistent results. And he's won quite a few races. He's had quite a few poles. He's qualifying where I think he's strong, but in some of the races, I just don't think he's had the pace, especially even against Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, who's now, by the way, storming up the ranks. So,
And can we just say, Charlie, that Red Bull is faster than the Mercedes this year in straight line speed. It is faster. But Hamilton manages to wring the wheels off of that W12. Valtteri seems to be struggling with it a bit more, doesn't he? With the car, he looked quite settled in last year's car. He was getting second places. He was winning races. This year, Charlie, he looks uncomfortable in it, shall we say.
He does. I mean, at Imola, he was dropping down the field. Like, he even got George Russell even caught up to him in a Williams. I mean, that is crazy. Bottas just did not get his tyres up to temperature and was struggling in one of the fastest on the grid.
I don't think it helped, Charlie. It was raining that weekend, and Mercedes doesn't work too well in the wet weather. It likes low downforce tracks, doesn't it? Monaco is the opposite. You want maximum downforce, maximum rear wing, don't you, at Monaco?
Yeah, definitely.
Where you go to a circuit like Monza, where the Mercedes shines because it's minimum downforce, minimum rear wing, maximum speed, and the Mercedes is smashing every single lap time, every single driver, and unless they get a penalty, Charlie, like they did last year, they always look unbeatable at Monza.
They do. I think as well, Valtteri, I'll go back to Valtteri now. I think I'm going to be interested to see how his next few races get on, because I'm fearing that his seat for next season could be under massive jeopardy if he doesn't perform.
It could be, Charlie. It really, really could be, and I'm worried for Valtteri. As I said earlier, I'm worried for him. But, look, we've still got, what is it? 7 races to go to the summer break. He's got plenty of time to prove himself. He could even do it this weekend. He's got plenty of time to turn this season around. He can still win it. He can still win the championship. If something bizarre really happens. He can still win this, Charlie. He's still in the title fight. He's what is he? 34 points maybe behind his 49 points behind his teammate, is it? So
yeah, he's behind more than 25 behind Verstappen.
Yes, it seems a lot, but actually it's not a huge amount in terms of F1, is it?
No, and I think as well, it's going to depend on how the other two drivers, Hamilton and Verstappen, are going to have the rest of the season. I mean, it's a big weekend. Bottas has got to perform. I mean, another driver that I'm going to touch on before we finish this is a driver that I had so much hype going in for the season, Yuki Tsunoda, who I've had to say, after the first round in Bahrain, I've been a little bit disappointed with him, actually. I feel like there's more to come from him, I think.
Yeah, do you know what, Charlie? I've been excited for him, but equally I haven't liked the way he's conducted himself. He gets wound up, Charlie, quite quickly. I prefer Yuki to Mazepin. I don't. Mazepin got every part of Mazepin's driving style is beyond F3.
I did tweet about him the other week, actually, Nikita Mazepin, about ignoring blue flags and holding people up. So
yeah, Charlie, do you know that really annoyed me that he did that to Sergio Perez, and yet he still had the gut to say it wasn't his fault. You know, you have your car number 9 flashing on the panels blue. That clearly indicates to you, Charlie, that there is a driver behind that wants to get through.
Nikita Mazepin, let's be honest with you, he has had an awful start. He's making mistakes. He's struggling to get anywhere in the car. His seat is under so much pressure. Mick Schumacher, on the other hand, is doing much better than him in that car. And I know that Haas is not very uncompetitive this year, but Mick Schumacher's driving really well in that car.
Charlie, do you think if Nikita keeps driving like this, he'll be out for Haas, or is it money? Haas are getting paid a lot of money to keep him in there.
I think he's got to go. If he doesn't perform,
I'm just hearing rumours actually, Charlie, that Gene Haas will be selling Haas at the end of the year to Nikita Mazepin's father. So that will definitely keep Mazepin in the seat for longer, won't it?
He's got a Nikita Mazepin. I'm not going to be rude here. He's a very, very dangerous. He moves over very late. I saw this in a couple of years ago in a free race, I think, where he was moving very late over to cover the inside line. I think that's not a great driving style in F1. It's very dangerous.
It's not, Charlie. Right, Charlie. Unfortunately, we've hit time for the F1 catch up. This show will be back next week at 8 p.m. But before that, we will have Monaco Grand Prix qualifying Saturday 1:30 live on YouTube. We'll see you then when Formula One returns.